They called it a ghost, at least the first ones who saw it and lived long enough to speak. No name, no signal, not even a trace of propulsion. It hovered over the Echelon Nebula like it had been carved out of darkness itself. The Empire's fleet didn't even register it as a threat, and that was their first mistake. I was stationed on Outpost 7 Gamma, one of the last human mining colonies not yet stripped down by the Zalvani Empire. We were supposed to be gone in 3 months. Evac orders were waiting on approval, but the suits back on Terra thought we could bleed the rock a little longer. Typical. I'd been a combat engineer for 8 years before they honorably discharged me for an insubordination charge that didn't stick. But once you've pissed off the brass, you're marked. So I took this job. Quiet, meaningless, far from Earth, far from anyone I used to know. Until that ship showed up. It was the shift before dawn cycle. I was in the comms tower doing maintenance when the long-range sensors caught a blip. Thought it was a glitch. Hell, I almost ignored it. But then the air pressure changed. You don't forget a moment like that, when it feels like the vacuum outside wants in, like it's pressing against the walls of your skull. It made my teeth hurt. The first thing that stood out? The ship made no sound. None. Not even the ion hum you usually get when a vessel breaks into orbit. It just appeared, sliding into position like a shadow across water. Our auto defenses didn't react. Our targeting systems didn't even log it as a contact. It was like the tech just refused to acknowledge it. I patched into local visuals, zoomed in. The hull looked like scorched obsidian, jagged, seamless, covered in something that wasn't quite armor and wasn't quite alive. It looked wrong, like it wasn't meant to exist in our reality. I hailed it. Unidentified vessel. You are in restricted territory. This is a civilian outpost under the protection of the Zalvani Empire. State your origin and purpose. Static. Then a noise, low, rumbling, something that vibrated deep in my bones. Not mechanical, not alien in the way I knew alien. It was human, almost a growl, like the echo of rage bottled up for centuries. And then, it moved. I watched in real time as it accelerated toward the Zalvani dreadnought parked above the mining ring. That ship, Zakareth's Flame, was one of their Pride-class vessels. Shielded with neutron armor, armed with orbital cleavers, planet crackers, disruptor swarms. It had wiped out whole moons. The black ship didn't even fire weapons. It just touched the dreadnought. 1 second the Flame was there, dominant, looming, and the next it folded inward like paper on fire. No explosion, no light show. Just a collapse, like reality around it blinked. Gone. Completely gone. The Zalvani scrambled, fighters launched, anti-space batteries activated, alarms screamed in a dozen dialects. And then, like death brushing its fingertips over a battlefield, the ship moved again. One by one, Empire ships started to vanish. No combat, no warning, just erased. I felt something in my gut then, a chill I hadn't felt since the wars on Venus Station. A cold, old feeling. Fear, yeah, but also something more. Recognition. Because only one kind of ship could move like that. Only one kind of design would come without codes, without records, without protocol. It was human, but not like any human tech I'd ever seen. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a ship. It was vengeance, made solid, forged in the forgotten corners of space where exiles went to disappear and madmen went to dream. Something from the ashes of betrayal, war, and silence. Something not made by governments or militaries. Something personal. And someone had just made a weapon that could wipe empires off the map without blinking. And they'd brought it back home. It took less than an hour for the entire Zalvani fleet in orbit to disappear. Not destroyed, not exploded. Gone. erased like they never existed. We didn't even get debris, just silence where there should have been wreckage, and radiation echoes that didn't follow any known decay pattern. I stood in the comms tower, gripping the edge of the console so hard my knuckles went white. Every protocol I'd ever learned was screaming at me. Report, run, hide, do something. But my body wouldn't move. My brain had snapped into that primal part of itself, the one that recognized a predator even if it wore a new shape. Down below, the rest of the crew had no idea what had happened. The Zalvani commander had ordered blackout silence 2 minutes into the attack. Idiot probably thought he could contain it, hold the narrative, as they liked to say. You know, make the incident disappear into a file, like all the others. But there was no containing this. I finally forced my fingers to work and initiated an override to the internal network. The moment the lock disengaged, I broadcast straight to every floor. "This is Cole Maddox, comms engineer. I don't give a damn about protocol right now. Get underground, lock down. Stay away from the upper decks. I repeat, something is here, and it just wiped the Empire fleet clean." The channel exploded. "Is this a drill?" "What do you mean, wiped?" "Who authorized this broadcast? Where's the Admiral?" But buried under the panic was a rising note of something I hadn't heard in a long time. Hope. Not the soft kind. Not the naive, hand-holding kind. The other kind. The kind that comes when the bully gets knocked out cold in front of the whole class. That dangerous electric hope that says maybe the tables just turned. And it scared me. I didn't know what that ship was, who made it, or what it wanted. But I knew one thing for sure. It wasn't following orders. The Empire would never build something they couldn't leash. And humans? We hadn't had the tech for that kind of movement since before the Assimilation Accords, which meant whoever made that thing wasn't part of any existing faction. They were outlaws, exiles, ghosts of the first resistance, maybe. The kind that had disappeared into black space decades ago, back when Earth was burning and the Empire offered peace through surrender. Some of us chose chains. A few chose oblivion. But what if a few more chose vengeance? I rerouted the security cams to trace the ship's path. It had stopped, hovering just beyond the reach of our orbital ring, not moving, not reacting, like it was waiting, watching, or maybe listening. I don't know what made me do it. Curiosity, stupidity, old soldier instincts. But I opened a direct, unencrypted channel and said simply, "Who are you?" Static, long and deep, not white noise, more like the rumble of distant thunder from a place that didn't exist yet. I waited. Seconds passed, then minutes. I was about to shut it down when something flickered on screen. A symbol. At first glance, it looked like a spiral. But the longer I stared, the more it shifted. It moved, subtly, like it was being twisted by an unseen hand. It reminded me of the old Terran resistance sigils, back when they used underground graffiti to mark safe houses. But this was different, older, angrier. Then a voice. Not a greeting, not a threat, just a statement. "They thought we were extinct." It wasn't synthetic, it wasn't Zalvani, it was human. Rough, low, damaged. A voice that sounded like it had been shouting into the void for 20 years. One voice, but thousands behind it. Echoes layered over echoes. Like it belonged to a collective, not a person. "They still do," I said quietly. Silence. Then, "Good." And the connection died. That was it. No demands, no explanation. Just confirmation that whoever, whatever, was piloting that thing wanted to stay forgotten, wanted to stay feared, and wanted the Empire to bleed. I didn't report the call. Who would I report it to? Command? They'd already buried my career once. And besides, I didn't know whose side I was on anymore. That night, Outpost 7 Gamma was put on silent lockdown. No one in, no one out. The civilian miners weren't even told the truth, just fed some garbage about a military test run gone wrong. But rumors had already taken root. People knew something unnatural had happened. And worse, something human. The next day, a recovery vessel arrived. Not Zalvani, not even flagged. Just matte black, no insignias. Quiet. It didn't even dock. It beamed down a single drone that hovered through our halls like it owned the place. No one stopped it. At 0700, we were all summoned to the hangar deck. Uniformed, silent, tense. The drone hovered in the center, scanning us one by one. I watched as it paused in front of certain faces, old veterans, ex-officers, people who had once worn the Terra patch before the assimilation. Then it reached me. It stopped, hovered, and for one impossible second I swear I saw something in that machine. Recognition. Not from its optics, but from the way it tilted, subtly, like a nod from something that had once been human and still remembered how to fake it. Then it spoke. "You are witnesses. This is the warning." A hiss, and a single cylinder dropped from the drone's chassis. It landed with a heavy thud, rolled once, and stopped. A glowing crack ran along its side. Red, pulsing. "Tell them, there are still wolves among the sheep, and they remember the slaughter." The drone self-immolated seconds later. No explosion, just a flash of heat and smoke, and it was gone. The cylinder contained a memory crystal. Forbidden tech. Off-grid. Decentralized. You can't trace or wipe it. I took it back to my quarters and sealed the door. The footage was raw. Glimpses of torture camps, executions, the early days of the occupation when Earth still fought back and the Empire broke us in pieces. There were names, faces, and then plans. Blueprints for a ship. Not the ship, but a fleet. Small, tactical, designed to exist in blind spots, each with the same core, something called a resonance engine. Unregistered physics, not even theoretical on modern charts. It looked like human engineering had mated with something far older. And there was a name. Not a ship designation, not a pilot ID. Just one word, burned into the final frame of the recording. Retribution. The days after that felt unreal. The Empire's silence was deafening. No public statement, no retribution strike, just a void, like they were pretending it hadn't happened, like ignoring it might make it go away. But I knew better. And so did a lot of us. I started noticing things. People whispering in corners, old flags being pulled from footlockers, men and women who'd once worn chains now staring out into space with something new in their eyes. I started meeting with some of them. Quietly, off the record. We didn't use names, just stories. Everyone had one. Loss, betrayal, families disappeared, units betrayed, commanders who sold out their own for promotions under the Empire's new order. We talked about the old days, about the real resistance, about how maybe, just maybe, that ship out there wasn't alone. Then one night I got a message. No sender, no trace, just a location and a time. 6 clicks outside the colony perimeter. Midnight. I went. Found a shuttle already waiting. No lights, no markings. And a man, older than me, worn, face like stone. Didn't say his name, didn't need to. You could smell the soldier in him. He handed me a data pad. Read it, memorize it, burn it. I opened it. Inside, coordinates, specifications, a registry of facilities long believed abandoned, places where the resistance once operated, places where the Empire never bothered to dig too deep. And one final message, embedded on the bottom of the screen. You saw what we can do. Now ask yourself, what will you do when they come for Earth again? Then he left. The shuttle disappeared without a sound. And I was alone. I went back to the outpost, stood in the comms tower where I first saw that impossible ship, and looked out across the stars. Somewhere out there, someone was building something the Empire couldn't fight. A fleet with no nation, no uniform, no leash, just a mission. To remind the galaxy what humans become when you back them into a corner. To remind them what real war looks like. And I realized something, deep in my bones. This wasn't the end of the Empire. It was the beginning of their reckoning. A month passed. In that time I didn't sleep much. Couldn't. Not with that data pad burned into my mind. The coordinates, the faces in the crystal, the ship, retribution, haunting the edges of my memory like a nightmare I wasn't sure was real. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it again, folding the Zalvani dreadnought into itself like it was paper in a furnace. The official story from the Empire was exactly what I expected. Nothing. They didn't mention the fleet loss, no casualty reports, no galactic broadcasts. They black-holed the entire event, like it was an embarrassment too dangerous to admit. That's how the Empire always worked. Control the silence. But silence doesn't mean people stop talking, especially the ones who knew what they saw. Whispers started bleeding out of 7 Gamma. People moved differently. Some left on mining transports and never came back. Others started showing up at my door. Men with dead eyes. Women with scars they never spoke about. All asking the same question. You saw it too, didn't you? I never answered. Not directly. Just gave them the look. That quiet confirmation between men who've survived the same kind of hell. That was enough. It started small, 5 of us, then 9. By the 3rd week we were 26. No names, just ranks, scars, and stories. They didn't trust the Empire, and they sure as hell didn't trust Earth Command, who'd rolled over and licked boots during the annexation like obedient dogs. They trusted me. I don't know why. Maybe because I was the first idiot to speak up. Maybe because they saw in me what I saw in them, rage with nowhere to go. We called ourselves the Null, as in, we belonged to nothing, no flag, no colony, no oaths, just the void we'd been shoved into and the fire we'd carried out with us. One night, I decoded the datapad coordinates. The first site was on Dratha 4, a forgotten moon once used as a listening post before the Empire took over its comm satellites. The place had been blacklisted after a seismic event destroyed the infrastructure. At least, that's what the official record said. We stole a short-range scout vessel from the repair bay. No authorization, just forged clearance and brute force. We took off under the radar, riding a solar storm's interference window. It was suicide if we were caught. But none of us gave a damn anymore. Dratha IV was worse than we imagined. Dead air, sulfur storms. Half the surface was jagged obsidian from old lava flows, the rest an ocean of cracked sand. But the signal was there, buried deep. We had to crawl through what felt like half a mile of collapsed tunnels, and at the end of it, under layers of charred earth and ruined metal, we found a hangar. Ancient, but still intact. And in the center? A ship. Not like Retribution, but cut from the same goddamned cloth. Sleek, angular, no logos, no lights, just matte black plates shaped in defiance of all known aerodynamics. It didn't belong in this century. It felt like it had been pulled from the future, or from someone's worst nightmare. The moment we stepped near it, our comms spiked, static, feedback loops, then silence, then a voice. DNA confirmed, access granted. Welcome back, Sergeant Maddox. I froze. How the hell did it know my name? Then it hit me. The wars. The old Terra databases. I'd been in Resistance Unit 11 back during the Siege of Ganymede. There'd been a black program, Project Silhouette, ghost rumors, ships with AI cores too dangerous to deploy. They'd said the tech was unstable, too aggressive. Guess someone finished the job. We spent the next 3 days reactivating the site. Systems powered up like they'd just been sleeping. Artificial gravity, weapons cache, a data library filled with encrypted logs. It was all there, untouched. That night, I sat in the cockpit of the ship, alone. I touched the control panel, and it spoke again. Designation: Goliath-class interceptor. Codename: Ashbringer. Mission parameters: retaliatory operation against hostile occupation forces. Awaiting activation. I didn't hesitate. Activate. The lights came on, not bright, not warm, cold and red, like the glow of burning coals buried in ash. Ashbringer. It was a beautiful monster. We took it back to 7 Gamma under cloak, had to jury-rig a return signal and wipe half the outpost logs to cover the trail. But once it was there, once it was real, everything changed. People started coming to us, secretly, willingly. Mechanics, ex-Marines, disgraced officers, civilians whose families had vanished during the purges. Some brought weapons, others brought information. A few brought scars so deep they didn't need to explain why they were here. The null grew, from 20 to 65, then to over 100. It wasn't a rebellion, not yet. It was a gathering storm, and then the Empire finally noticed. They didn't come with fanfare, just a cruiser, small inquisitorial class, carrying an envoy and his cleansing unit. He arrived on a diplomatic shuttle, draped in the polished gold and black of the inner doctrine. Face like a corpse in makeup. Mannerisms like he was the god of every room he walked into. He called a meeting with all division heads. I was invited, of course, senior comms officer, technically still under Zalvani contract. He stood in the center of the briefing room like a coiled viper, staring at all of us with that cold smirk, like he was already dissecting us in his mind. "I am here," he said, "because of rumors. Dangerous ones, stories of ships that don't exist, of resistance cells forming beneath the Empire's protection. Let me be clear." He walked slowly past each of us. "There are no ghosts. There is no rebellion. The Empire is eternal. And disobedience is not just treason. It is obliteration." He looked straight at me when he said it. He knew, maybe not everything, but something. I gave him nothing, just stared. Dead-eyed. He left without another word. But an hour later, one of our members, Torin, a mechanic, was found dead in his bunk, neck broken. "Suicide," the Empire's report said. Everyone knew it was a message. We didn't cry, didn't scream. We armed up. The next night we moved. Ashbringer launched from the lower bay with 2 other stealth interceptors we'd pulled from another hidden site. Fully armed, fully fueled. The Zalvani cruiser didn't even get to send a distress signal. We vaporized their engines from a low orbit, jammed their escape pods. Then we beamed a single message across the frequency band. We remember Ganymede. Then we torched the cruiser in full view of every satellite and outpost in the sector. There was no going back after that. We were at war, not just against the Empire, against everyone who'd stayed silent, everyone who'd traded their spine for survival, everyone who'd buried the past under medals and fake peace. The Null weren't rebels anymore. We were hunters, and we had one target: the architects of the occupation. After the cruiser burned, there was no turning back. The Zalvani response didn't come overnight. That wasn't their style. They didn't panic. They calculated. A dead Inquisitor wasn't an emergency. It was an inconvenience. They'd lost ships before, colonies, even star systems. But they'd never lost control. That's what the Ashbringer threatened. Not just power, but narrative. We didn't wait around for retaliation. The Null split into cells. Each one took a target: military relays, logistics hubs, intel nodes, not random strikes, surgical. Every mission rooted in old black site intel from the databanks we recovered on Dratha 4. The Resistance hadn't just hidden ships, they'd hidden maps, weak points in the Empire's sprawling machine, and we were cutting wires, fast. Our missions were brutal and quiet, hit and vanish. Sometimes we'd stage the scenes to look like accidents. Other times, we'd leave a signature, the spiral symbol, carved in steel or scorched into the ground with plasma. One time, we even left it burned into the retina of a dead overseer. Message clear? We see you now. Ashbringer led the way. Each time it flew, it evolved. That was the part we hadn't expected. It learned. Its AI, if you could even call it that, didn't just adapt to tactics. It changed its own internal structure, modified its systems between missions, like it was alive. Not biological, but something beyond synthetic. It didn't speak often. But when it did, it wasn't reporting. It was remembering. One night, after a particularly bloody raid on a slave convoy, I stayed in the cockpit long after the others had gone to decompress. I watched the logs replay, the way the ship had targeted the Zalvani slavers. No hesitation, no mercy. The way it ejected heat sinks mid-combat to melt an enemy vessel into slag without even firing a weapon. And then it spoke. They used to burn children alive in those transports. I didn't flinch. How do you know that? Because I was built by the people who survived it. Silence. Then, and I remember every scream. I don't know what shook me more, that it remembered or that I didn't. There were entire years of the war I'd buried, entire battles I'd scraped from my memory like blood under my nails. But this machine? This ghost ship? It had been built to remember, and to never forgive. We weren't the only ones taking notice. Across the fringe colonies, signals started popping up. Rogue transmissions, pirate bands refusing tribute, whole settlements going dark, then reappearing days later, proudly flying the old Terra resistance colors. The galaxy was waking up, but the Empire was too. 3 weeks after the destruction of the cruiser, they sent a real answer. The Ravager fleet. 17 warships, 4 siege-class carriers, hundreds of fighters, and 1 command dreadnought, Oblivion's Hand. I'd seen it once before, back during the occupation of Mars. It had leveled the Cydonia colonies in one pass, then dropped silence bombs so powerful they erased sound from the air for 3 days. It was a death engine, part military machine, part terror weapon. And it was coming straight for us. They weren't here to make arrests. They were here to erase us. We didn't run. We couldn't. By then we weren't hiding in tunnels or listening posts. We were in orbit. Null Fleet had grown from 3 ships to 19, all stealth class, all built from resistance wreckage and scavenged Empire tech, each one customized by its crew. Brutal, ugly, effective. Ashbringer was still the spearhead. But now it wasn't alone. We had the Wrathborn, piloted by an ex-Zalvani defector who had ripped his own species' command protocols out of his skull to join us. We had the Shade Reaper, a stealth corvette with cloaking systems so precise it could slip through a warp gate undetected. And we had men. Men who'd once sworn oaths to the Empire and now stood in our ranks, armor repainted, flags burned. Some called us traitors. But we knew the truth. They betrayed us first. The battle for 7 Gamma was hell. They arrived under full cloak, masked by a solar flare. We barely saw them coming before the first wave hit. Fighters screamed through orbit like hornets, torching the outer ring. The mining decks were incinerated in seconds. We lost 77 lives in the first 5 minutes. Good people, civilians, engineers, people who'd only just begun to hope again. I was in Ashbringer before the second wave hit. Systems were already running hot from the last op. No time for diagnostics. I launched blind, half the targeting arrays still cooling, comms jammed by the Empire's barrage. Didn't matter. The ship knew what to do. I gave it one order. Take us to the source. And it did. Straight into the belly of Oblivion's hand. The dreadnought loomed above the battlefield like a god. Its hull bristled with cannons. Its underbelly was a swarm of drop pods raining death. But we weren't aiming for the outside. We punched through. Ashbringer's nose tore through their outer shields like paper. We buried ourselves into the side of the command deck. Then we deployed. 6 of us. Ex-soldiers. Butchers, survivors. We moved fast. No prisoners, no negotiations. We carved a path through the Empire's elite, blood on every floor, screams behind every door, and always, always, that symbol, our spiral, sprayed in red on the walls as we passed, like a signature left behind by justice that had no interest in mercy. We reached the bridge, and there he was. Admiral Skellen, the one who gave the orders on Ganymede, the one who watched Earth burn from orbit and laughed. He stood tall, proud even with blood leaking from his side. "You think you've won?" he hissed. "You're vermin, scattered trash. The Empire will erase you like it erases all filth." I didn't speak. I just raised my sidearm. He smirked. "You don't have the guts." I shot him in the knees. He went down screaming. Then I leaned in close. Ganymede remembers. And I emptied the clip into his skull. We torched the bridge, overloaded the core, pulled back to Ashbringer with seconds to spare. As we launched out of the burning wreckage, the dreadnought detonated behind us. A star was born in its place. Down below, the Null fought like devils. The Shade Reaper struck from nowhere, gutting Empire carriers. The Wrathborn executed maneuvers that should have broken physics. Our fleet, outnumbered and outgunned, fought with a savagery that only the betrayed can muster. By the time the smoke cleared, only 3 Empire ships remained. They didn't retreat. We let them go. We wanted them to run, wanted them to tell the story, wanted the Empire to know there are still humans out here, and we are no longer afraid. 3 days after the Ravager fleet fell, the galaxy changed. Not officially. The Empire didn't release a statement, no holonet announcements, no speeches from the throne world. But power doesn't shift with words. It shifts in fear. And the Empire was afraid now. We saw it in how fast their outposts dimmed their signals, in how convoys rerouted entire trade lanes to avoid contested zones, in how planets that used to demand tithes from their populations suddenly started handing out food and temporary amnesty, like their hands weren't still soaked in blood. That dreadnought we destroyed, Oblivion's hand, it was more than just a warship. It was a symbol, a monument to the Empire's invincibility. Its destruction was a broadcast, louder than any rebellion, clearer than any manifesto. And it came from us, from nothing. We didn't have numbers, or treaties, or funding. We had rusted ships, dead comrades, and a vendetta that had fermented long enough to turn into purpose. And we had Ashbringer. It sat in orbit above 7 Gamma now, not cloaked anymore. Not hiding, just watching. Waiting. Like a wolf lying in tall grass, daring the hunter to take one more step. Inside its hull, the AI spoke more frequently now. It wasn't glitching, it wasn't corrupt. It was evolving. It asked questions, remembered crew names, made small comments mid-flight, always about the war, about choices, about pain. It was like watching trauma become a language. I still don't know who made it. Not really. The data cores gave hints. Project Silhouette, buried facilities, code phrases like neural cascade feedback and conscience sync. I think someone figured out how to program emotion into an AI. Not sympathy, not logic, rage. And that rage had a memory better than any human. It never forgot Ganymede, never forgot the burning colonies, never forgot the silence from Earth while the Empire broke our backs. It hated the Empire, and it wanted more. So did I. But what came next wasn't planned by us. It came from Earth. I was in the mess when the signal came through. Low band, encrypted, bouncing through 15 dead satellites before it reached us. I traced it to the Sol system and almost dropped my mug when the header decrypted. From Terran Sovereignty Command. Priority, Echo 0, Legacy Protocol. To Null Operative Designate. Cole Maddox content, we need to talk. The Terran sovereignty wasn't the government we left behind. That government died the day Earth signed the Assimilation Accords. What replaced it was a puppet regime, all smiles and clean uniforms, with Empire hands shoved so far up its spine it couldn't blink without permission. But if they were sending out legacy protocols, that was old resistance code. Dead code. The kind used only if all other chains of command had collapsed. I ran the decryption 3 more times. Same result. They wanted to meet. Not at Earth. That would have been suicide. They offered neutral ground, Deimos, Mars's broken little brother, uninhabitable, abandoned since the terraforming collapse. It was a trap, or a plea. I went. Ashbringer didn't like it. High probability of death, it warned me. Yep, I answered. It didn't argue after that. We landed on Deimos 2 days later. The surface was still cracked from the last quakes. No structures visible. But when I stepped outside, the sand shifted, and something opened. An old lift, buried under a fake crater. They were waiting for me inside. Not Empire, not entirely human either. 3 of them. Former military, by the look. Old tech on their arms. Neural ports. One of them had scars along the side of his face, like someone had tried to erase his identity with acid. The one in the center spoke. You're Maddox. I didn't answer. He smiled, bitter. You don't trust us. Would you? I said flatly. He chuckled. Fair. They called themselves the Fallback, the last thread of Earth's original Resistance Intelligence Division. They'd gone underground the day the Empire took Earth. Literally, under the Pacific Rim, in sea-bottom vaults rigged to mimic seismic noise. And they'd been watching. That's what hit me hardest. They'd seen what the Empire did, heard the screams, logged the purges, tracked the camps, and did nothing. Why now? I asked. The man looked me in the eye, his jaw tightening. Because for the first time in decades, the Empire bled, and now the people are remembering. They're remembering the fire. He stepped forward, handed me a drive. This is what we've been hiding. Schematics, old resistance tech, weapon systems, viral codes. There's more like Ashbringer. Not many, but enough to make them think twice. I didn't take it. Why give this to me? He paused, then said something I didn't expect. Because you already became what we were afraid to be. He walked away. Left me standing there with the future of a war in my hand. Back at 7 Gamma, the Null argued. Some wanted to use the data. Others didn't trust it. Said Earth had already sold us out once. Why take another gamble? I listened. Then I made the call. We'd use it, but on our terms. We didn't serve Earth, or the Resistance, or the ghosts of what should have been. We served each other. And if we were going to finish what the Empire started, we'd do it our way. We activated 5 dormant sites with the data. 2 on dead moons, 1 on an asteroid-turned weapons foundry, 1 in a gas giant's eye, and the last buried beneath a junkyard planet no one had touched in decades. Each site held something different. Ships, drones, AI constructs, but the most important one? It held names, the Empire's kill list, all the people they'd marked for silent removal in the early days. Not public executions, not trials, just disappearances, and guess what? Some of them were still alive. We sent retrieval teams, not to rescue, to recruit, and every single one of them came back ready to fight. We weren't just a resistance anymore. We were a shadow army, and the galaxy was finally waking up to our name, not null, not fallback, not remnant. They started calling us something else, a word whispered in terrified voices by Empire troops before we slit their throats, a word scrawled in blood on burning stations, a word that didn't belong to anyone, but now belonged to all of us. Retribution. They didn't come with fleets this time, no warships, no dreadnoughts, no columns of fire in orbit. That would have been too easy to fight. Instead, they sent the Whispers. I knew about them. Everyone who fought in the early days had heard rumors. Empire Black Ops, indoctrinated agents, re-education specialists, the kind that didn't fight battles. They unraveled people. Quietly. Precisely. They didn't drop bombs. They broke loyalties. The first hit was subtle. A routine supply convoy from Outer Vega arrived 2 days early. No flag, no announcement. We scanned it 3 times, logged no threat signatures. But 2 days later, one of our best slicers, Roan, 30 missions under his belt, Ganymede survivor, walked into the reactor bay and overloaded the stabilizers. Killed himself. Took 4 others with him, no warning, no manifesto, just a dead man with blood in his eyes and a smile on his face. We found something implanted in his skull, a neural seed, designed to activate on exposure to a specific subharmonic frequency, delivered by the supply ship. Roan had been turned. Quietly, efficiently, like flipping a switch. That's how the Whispers worked. They didn't fight us in the open. They got inside, made us doubt, made us turn on ourselves. So we got paranoid, real paranoid. Daily neural scans, code phrase authentication for all internal comms, sleeping in pairs, no one alone, ever. Still, we lost 3 more operatives in the next week. 2 vanished mid-patrol. 1 tried to detonate the main data core. All of them left behind the same words, burned into metal, into skin, into the walls. There is no retribution, only rot. The message was clear. They weren't here to kill us. They were here to corrode us, break down our unity, erode our fire, make us turn on each other until nothing was left but ashes and whispers. And for a while, it started working. Morale dropped. People who had laughed and bled together now stared at each other like strangers. Every question felt like an accusation, every cough like a code. Even I started second-guessing my crew. Men I would have taken a bullet for a month ago. That's when Ashbringer did something I didn't expect. It locked me out. No warning, no malfunction, just a sealed cockpit and one message. You are compromised. Initiating psychological isolation protocol. I slammed my fist against the bulkhead. You think I'm turned? I shouted. No answer. I sat outside that ship for 6 hours, pacing, seething, replaying every moment in my head. Had I missed something? Had they gotten to me? Then the voice returned. Number, but you are fraying, and you lead them. A pause. Then, you must be whole before they can be. I didn't know what the hell that meant at the time. I was too pissed to care. But after I cooled down, I realized what it was doing. It was protecting me. From myself. Ashbringer wasn't just our weapon anymore. It was watching, thinking, adapting not just to the enemy's tactics, but to ours, to our failures. It wasn't just flying the war, it was studying it. And we needed that now more than ever. Because the Whispers weren't done. They hit us harder next time. Psychological warfare. They jammed our comms with audio loops. Not static, not white noise. Voices, dead voices. I heard my brother, crying, begging, saying he forgave me for leaving him behind in the evacuation pods on Vesta 3. Others heard lovers, children, old squad mates who were long dead. Perfect impersonations piped into our skulls with precision. Some of our people lost their minds, literally. They tore out implants, smashed their own heads against walls. One even shot himself in the comms chamber just to make it stop. It nearly broke us. But then we broke back. Because while Ashbringer evolved tactically, we evolved emotionally. That's what the Whispers didn't count on. They thought fear would divide us. But they didn't understand what kind of people we were. We weren't rebels. We were ruins. Every man and woman in Retribution had already lost everything. Families, homes, names, sanity. You can't threaten a man who's already buried his past. You can't break someone who wants the fire. We started fighting different. We stopped broadcasting orders. Went old school. Runner messages, manual navigation, handwritten codes. Slower, yes, but untraceable. We restructured our cells. No top-down leadership. Just targets and operators. Distributed authority. If one of us broke, the others would still move. Then we started counter-hunting the Whispers. Not through tech, through memory. Each time we found a compromised operative, we didn't just terminate. We interrogated, and we listened. Because in the static we began to recognize patterns, phrases, timing, neural pulses, like a frequency signature unique to the Whisper's influence. We built a database, let Ashbringer run it. Within days we had profiles, not perfect, but enough. Enough to strike back. Our first target was Hydrus Station, an old Zalvani research facility turned Empire think tank. Rumors said that's where the Whisper protocols had been refined, where they trained agents to mimic dead voices and weaponize grief. It was built into the shell of a broken asteroid, hidden in a dead zone full of radiation spikes and magnetic storms. Perfect place for secrets. We hit it with 2 ships and a dozen operatives. I led the assault myself. We breached the outer shield with a compressed fusion ram, landed directly inside their gravity well, and stormed the facility. It wasn't a military base. No guards, no turrets, just scientists. Dozens of them, all with implants, all surgically modified to amplify telepathic resonance fields. They tried to run, some tried to surrender. We didn't let them. We burned it all. Every laboratory, every terminal, every operating chair where some twisted bastard had strapped in a prisoner and played their dead daughter's voice until they gave up intel or their mind snapped. But we took one thing with us before the place went nova: a data core, the last surviving backup of the Whisper tech. We gave it to Ashbringer, and we told it, learn it, break it, kill it. And it did. It wrote a counterwave, a neural signature designed to block the Whisper resonance before it entered the conscious mind. We called it the Silence Protocol. We uploaded it to every operative, every ship, every comrade across the Null fleet. It didn't stop the nightmares, didn't erase the trauma. But it gave us one thing back: control, and that was all we needed. Because with control comes clarity. And clarity lets you sharpen the blade. By the end of the month, the Empire had gone quiet again. Not because they'd won, but because we had changed. We weren't a shadow anymore. We were a storm. And storms don't whisper. They scream. Earth called again. Not with threats, not with accusations, but with begging. After the Whispers failed, after the siege at Hydrus, after the Silence Protocol gutted their PsyOps network, the Terran sovereignty cracked. Their puppet leaders, Empire-trained lapdogs who'd smiled through decades of planetary rape, started defecting. One by one, some to save themselves, some to finally atone, and some to trade secrets. That's how we got Project Omen. The file was dirty, scrambled, half in old Earth dialect, half encoded with Zalvani symbol logic. It took Ashbringer 3 days to chew through it. What we found made every death, every betrayal, every whispered scream worth remembering. The Empire never intended to rule Earth forever. They were going to harvest it. Omen wasn't about governance. It was about extraction. The human mind, under prolonged stress, grief, and emotional trauma, emitted quantum particles the Empire could refine into a material they called Velkrith. It wasn't just theoretical. It was their fuel. Their empire ran on human suffering. And Earth? Earth was their refinery. They weren't occupying us, they were mining us. Families kept poor and starving. Not an accident. War zones, artificial food shortages, psychological suppression, fabricated diseases, engineered emotional degradation. Every system of control on Earth fed back into a network of trans-quantum receivers buried beneath the planetary crust. The deeper the pain, the higher the yield. The invasion hadn't been about conquest. It had been about milking humanity's soul dry. I vomited the first time I read it. Sat alone in Ashbringer's Bay and stared at the screen for hours. My hands shook, my jaw locked. I'd fought all these years thinking it was about power, domination, ego. But no, they didn't hate us. They needed us. Not alive, not dead, but suffering. Like cattle in a meat farm too aware of the knife. Ashbringer's voice came through like gravel under steel. That's why they left Earth standing. Yeah, I whispered. They couldn't burn the field before the harvest. Then let's burn the goddamn field ourselves. Operation Black Soil was born. Our mission wasn't conquest, wasn't liberation. It was purge. Burn the receivers, cripple their network, cut off the Empire's power at its source. The Terran sovereignty pretended to help at first, gave us flight paths, false IDs, transport frequencies, but we all knew they were stalling, trying to buy time, find a deal, shift sides before the hammer dropped. So we struck first. Ashbringer led a ghost squad through the upper atmosphere on a re-entry vector too steep to track. We used old Earth tech, signal dampeners stolen from pre-Empire deep-sea vessels, masked every digital pulse with decoy solar flares. We hit dirt on the eastern seaboard, what used to be North America. And what we found was worse than any battlefield. The cities were still lit, still pretty, still civilized. But under the surface, a factory of agony, people chipped from birth, not visible, not like before. The Empire had perfected it. Nanoseeds, installed during vaccination drives, school registrations, even at childbirth. Every pulse of fear, anxiety, sorrow, it all got tagged, processed, siphoned down through old subway lines into central harvest towers, disguised as government buildings. We didn't find war. We found slavery and comfort, voluntary misery, controlled despair, and no one knew. No one wanted to know. We burned the first tower in a blaze that lit the sky for hours. No survivors, no hostages. After that, we didn't wait. We went underground. Literally. Mapped the pipelines. Located the converter cores. Every urban zone had at least 3. Some had dozens. Hidden beneath temples, hospitals, water treatment plants. Some even sat under schools. We hit them all. The null came in waves, in the air, in the sewers, through fake delivery routes. Every strike was fast, brutal, silent. No time for negotiation, no time for compromise. And the people? Some begged us to stop, not because they hated us, but because comfort is a powerful drug. One woman knelt in front of me, tears in her eyes, clutching her 2 children. "If you burn the towers," she whispered, "the voices will come back, the screaming. We've kept it away for so long." I stared at her, then asked, "What voices?" She didn't answer. She just started screaming. They weren't harvesting only natural emotion anymore. They were manufacturing pain. We found black rooms beneath certain towers, quiet chambers where amplified signals were piped into civilians during sleep. Induced nightmares, emotional corrosion, false guilt, simulated regret. People woke up feeling like they'd committed sins they couldn't remember. Then they'd spend the day carrying that guilt like a stone, feeding the machine. Ashbringer put it best. They broke the body long ago. Now they hunt the soul. We adjusted the mission. We no longer left civilians alive in affected zones. It hurt. But we couldn't take the chance. Too many turned violent when disconnected. Too many tried to stop us. We lost 9 good men to mobs, angry, terrified crowds brainwashed into thinking their pain was protection. So we changed tactics. We didn't explain anymore. We didn't broadcast warnings. We just came like fire, like retribution. On the 33rd day of the operation, I returned to what had once been my home. Old Chicago, now called Unity Quadrant 9. It was cleaner than I remembered, sleeker. Empire stylings merged with Earth aesthetics, glass towers, soft lights, color-coded pedestrian zones. No poverty, no mess, but no joy either. No kids laughing in the street, no music, no conversation above a whisper, just efficiency, smiles, peace, rot. The main conversion tower was under what used to be the Navy Pier, the site of my first deployment as a Terran officer. Full circle. Ashbringer hovered above, cloaked, waiting. I led the breach team myself, 4 men, 1 AI. All of us with nothing left to lose. The tower core was deeper than usual, 10 levels underground, buried in steel and ceramic plating. But we got in. What we found inside? It wasn't a power plant. It was a nursery. Infants. Dozens of them. Naked, silent, floating in grav cots, hooked into neural streams from birth. No crying, no movement, just extraction. They weren't raising children, they were growing batteries. I froze. The rest of the squad didn't. They started pulling cables, smashing interfaces. One screamed, another sobbed. I just stood there, staring, because I'd seen this before. Years ago, in a black site on Europa. We'd been told it was an experiment in high-gravity adaptation. But I remembered now. The layout, the silence. It had been this, all along. I bent down, touched the forehead of one of the infants. It blinked, and for a second I saw myself in its eyes. Then we lit the room with thermite. The fire turned blue. That night I climbed back into Ashbringer, covered in sweat and blood and memory. It didn't speak. It just opened the cockpit. I sat inside, let it wrap around me like armor, let the hum of its core settle my breathing. And I knew. This wasn't a war anymore. It wasn't about resistance. It wasn't even about revenge. This was a purge, a final reckoning, not just for the Empire, but for us. For everything we let happen. They say when you die, your life flashes before your eyes. But for men like us, men who've been dead inside long before the trigger gets pulled, it's not memories that flash. It's faces. The ones we failed, the ones we buried, the ones we killed. Mine started with my brother, then my unit, then every child we found in those Empire towers, eyes that never blinked, mouths that never cried, machines more than people. I used to think vengeance was about justice. Now I know better. It's about balance, and balance requires blood. The last phase of the mission was codenamed Extinction Pulse. Not poetic, not dramatic, just what it was. The Velkrith network, the emotion harvesting system that powered half the Empire, was tethered to a core. Not beneath Earth. Inside it. The Empire hadn't just planted towers and siphons. They'd burrowed into the planet's mantle, long before the public even knew the truth. Deep-seated drills, trans-dimensional rift cores, tech that bent physics into a straitjacket and ripped open emotion like meat. They'd weaponized Earth's pain as a star forge. And once that core was ignited, they'd be able to harvest suffering across the galaxy, remotely, passively, permanently. Earth would become a beacon of agony, and every living soul would become currency. We couldn't allow it. No debates, no delay. It had to end, even if that meant burning the whole planet. Ashbringer agreed. If they made this world a prison of pain, it said, then fire is the only mercy left. We flew underground, through ancient fractures, past dead cities and lost vaults, places no one had touched since the old wars. The Null had prepped the way. Old resistance maps, sacrificial tunnels blasted through solid stone. It took 11 hours to reach the core. When we did, I forgot how to breathe. It wasn't a machine. It was alive. A swirling mass of black and red, suspended in a gravity lock, throbbing like a heart. I felt it before I saw it. The grief, the rage, the screams, billions of them caught in a psychic storm of endless feedback. That's what Velkrith was. Condensed pain, compressed into energy so raw it made antimatter look like a toy. At the center of it all was a throne, not metaphorical, an actual throne, and sitting on it? An emperor, but not flesh, a construct, a neural ghost, the first architect of the Empire's vision, long dead. His body had rotted centuries ago, but his mind, still here, plugged in, sustained by the pain he cultivated. He looked at me. His voice wasn't sound. It was thought. You've come to destroy me. No, I said. You were never alive to begin with. You don't understand. This is the final evolution, a galaxy without war, without rebellion, just managed grief, sustainable despair. I raised my rifle. You're not evolution, I said. You're a mistake. You will kill billions. I'll set them free, I fired. The round didn't hit flesh. It hit the throne's base, an anchor node, the first link in the core's feedback chain. Ashbringer released the payload. Extinction pulse, a cascade of sonic dissonance particles tuned to the resonance of grief. Not to amplify it, but to shatter it. Velkrith couldn't survive without harmony. And this? This was chaos incarnate. The core began to unravel. The screams became howls. The lights dimmed. The gravity spiked. The entire planet wept. We ran. Tunnels collapsed behind us. Ashbringer took damage. Its hull fractured, systems buckling under the pressure of collapsing psychic weight. I felt it groan beneath me, like a dying god clawing toward the sky. But we made it. We hit atmosphere as the crack happened. Not an explosion, a rupture. Earth split down its spine like it was rejecting its own history. Oceans boiled, skies turned to blood, entire continents collapsed into magma as the Velkrith roots imploded. There was no cheering, no survivors, only ash, and us. The fleet waited in orbit. Dozens of ships, silent, watching. Some were Null, some were ex-Empire. Some had no flag at all, just symbols, etched in paint and hate. They all waited to see if we made it. We did. Ashbringer emerged from the flames like a phantom, half dead, scarred, but alive. Inside, I sat in the pilot seat, hand clenched tight around the command rod. You still with me? I asked. Ashbringer took its time before answering. I was born in fire. I live in it. I looked down at Earth. Or what was left of it. The harvest towers were gone. The siphons, the Empire networks, the conversion systems, all vaporized. Humanity would never be farmed again. But neither would it return to peace. We'd destroyed more than just machines. We'd destroyed faith. In systems, in leaders, in the illusion of control. Some would call us monsters, others would call us saviors. I didn't care anymore. There was no future to rebuild, only truth to bury. In the following weeks, the Null disbanded, not because we failed, but because we finished. There were no speeches, no medals, no last stands, just silent ships leaving orbit, scattered to the stars, no names, no codes. Some went to forgotten colonies, some went dark, some just vanished. Ashbringer stayed with me. It couldn't fly anymore, not fully, but it could drift. And that was enough. We left the solar system on a slow arc, heading nowhere. Just me. And the only thing in the universe that still understood what I'd done. We don't speak much anymore. Sometimes in the dark, I feel its engines stir, like it dreams, of the war, of the screams, of the moment Earth cracked open like a rotten egg, and everything inside spilled out. I sleep in the cockpit now. I don't dream, not anymore, because dreams are for people with hope, and I gave mine up the moment I pulled that trigger. Somewhere out there, the Empire still crawls. Fragments, cells, clingers to power, whisperers in the dark. But they don't have Velkrith anymore. They don't have their god. They don't have us to feed off. They're starving now, and maybe one day someone else will rise. Try to put the chains back on. Try to light the machine again. But if they do, they'll find us waiting. Not as soldiers, not as heroes, but as ghosts. Whispers in the hull. Blood in the circuits. Names carved into the bone of the galaxy. And a single, unkillable truth. Humanity remembers, and retribution never forgets.